She arrived at the airport early in the morning. The sun was just rising, and the sky was still soft with light. People moved all around her, some rushing to catch their flights, others waiting for their loved ones. The air smelled of fresh coffee and the faint scent of cleaning supplies. She carried a small black bag in one hand and her coat in the other. Her shoes clicked softly on the shiny floor as she walked through the terminal. She was calm and steady, ready to go home after a long trip. Her name was Lisa. She was a black woman in her late 40s. She wore a simple but elegant outfit, a blue blazer over a white blouse with black pants. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Lisa was not just any traveler. She was the newest federal judge in her district. She had worked very hard to reach this position. It was a big honor, but also a big responsibility. She knew she would have to be strong and fair in her new job. As Lisa walked, she noticed a group of police officers standing near the entrance to the customs area. They wore dark uniforms and badges that glinted under the airport lights. One of the officers glanced at her and then spoke quietly to the others. Lisa did not think much of it. Airports were places with many security checks, and she was used to answering questions. But as she approached the customs line, she felt the officer's eyes following her more closely. When she reached the checkpoint, one of the officers stepped forward. His name was Officer Harris. He was tall and had a stern face. He looked at Lisa and said, "Ma'am, can I ask you a few questions?" Lisa nodded politely. "Of course, officer. How can I help?" Harris's tone was sharp, almost aggressive. "Where are you coming from?" Lisa answered clearly. "I just flew in from Washington, D.C." The officer's eyes narrowed. "What were you doing there?" Lisa smiled gently, but stayed firm. "I was attending a legal conference." The officer looked away, then back at her. "Do you have anything to declare?" "Yes, I have some documents and a laptop with me," Lisa said. She was calm, but felt a slight tension growing inside her. She had traveled many times before and never had problems like this. Harris motioned to another officer to come over. The second officer stepped forward, a younger man named Officer Reed. He looked at Lisa's papers quickly, then back at her face. "Ma'am, we need to inspect your bag." Lisa nodded and handed over her black bag. The officers opened it carefully. Searching through the items, Lisa watched quietly. She had nothing to hide. But the officers seemed to be looking for something else, something beyond the usual checks. After a few minutes, Harris said, "Ma'am, there is a problem with your documents. It looks like some information doesn't match." Lisa was surprised. "What do you mean I have all the proper papers?" The officers exchanged looks. Reed said, "We might have to hold you here until we sort this out." Lisa felt her heart beat faster. She knew what was happening. Sometimes, people like her black women were treated unfairly, even when they had done nothing wrong. She took a deep breath and said, "Officer, I understand you need to do your job, but I assure you everything is in order."
Oh.
Face hardened. "Listen, ma'am, sometimes these things take time. You might have to pay a fine to clear this up." Lisa's eyes widened. "Pay a fine? For what exactly?" The officer shrugged. "For the paperwork issues. Standard procedure." Lisa shook her head slowly. "I don't think this is fair. I have all my documents correct." Reed looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Harris continued, "Look, if you want to avoid trouble, you can pay the fine now. Otherwise, we'll have to detain you." Lisa felt a mix of anger and disbelief. She knew this was wrong. They were trying to scare her into paying money she didn't. Oh, but she stayed calm. "I won't pay a fine for something I didn't do." The officers looked at each other, unsure what to do next. Lisa could see their frustration. She stood tall, her voice steady. "If you believe there is a problem, I will cooperate with the proper authorities, but I will not be extorted." That moment, another traveler nearby noticed the tension and whispered to a friend, "Those officers are being harsh on her for no reason." Lisa was used to this kind of treatment. It happened more than she wanted to admit. But she kept her dignity. She thought of all the years she had worked hard to become a judge. She had fought many battles to break through barriers and prove herself. She knew she was more than the color of her skin. Harris's tone softened a little, but his face still showed suspicion. "Who do you work for?" Lisa took a breath and said quietly, "I am the new federal judge for this district." The words hung in the air. The officers froze for a moment. Harris blinked, then looked away quickly. Red cleared his throat. "Federal judge." Lisa nodded. "Yes. I have the papers to prove it." She reached into her bag and took out her official judge ID card. The officers took it and examined it carefully. The proud authority on the card was clear. Harris's face changed. The confident, hard look was gone.
Ow.
There was a mix of surprise and embarrassment. Lisa stayed calm and waited. She wanted the officers to understand that their assumptions were wrong. She was not someone to intimidate or take advantage of. After a pause, Harris said, "We apologize, ma'am." "We didn't realize." Lisa nodded, keeping her voice gentle but firm. "It's important to treat everyone with respect, officer. No one should face this kind of treatment because of their race or appearance." The officers looked down, ashamed. Reed said quietly, "We understand, ma'am. We're sorry for the misunderstanding." Lisa smiled slightly, relieved that the situation was changing. "Thank you. I hope in the future you will be fair to all travelers." The officers nodded and Lisa gathered her belongings. She walked away, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The encounter had been difficult, but she had stood her ground. She thought about how many others might not have been so lucky as she. Left the airport, Lisa looked back once. She hoped this experience would help bring change. She was determined to use her position as a judge to fight against injustice and to help others who faced unfair treatment. Her footsteps were steady as she moved through the crowd. The morning light grew brighter, and she felt ready for the work ahead. After the officers saw Lisa's official judge ID, everything in the airport seemed to change. The way they looked at her, the way they spoke, even the way they stood became different. It was as if they had suddenly realized that they were facing someone very important, someone with power they had never expected. Lisa stayed calm and quiet for a moment, watching them closely. She could tell they felt embarrassed. Their earlier harshness was replaced by nervousness. But she also saw something else, something she had experienced many times before, an assumption broken, a prejudice revealed. The officers had judged her before they knew who she was. They had seen her as just another black woman, someone they could pressure and treat unfairly. But now that they knew she was a federal judge, they had to change their attitude. It was a moment that showed how deeply bias could affect people's actions without them even realizing it. Officer Harris looked down at the floor. His voice was quieter than before when he said, "Ma'am, we did not mean to cause trouble. We just thought there was a problem."
Ow.
Lisa nodded slowly. "I understand you have a job to do, but it is important to be fair to everyone. Shh. Not assume anything based on how someone looks." Harris swallowed hard and glanced at his partner, Officer Reed, who was also avoiding eye contact. Lisa felt a mix of emotions, frustration because this should not have happened, but also hope that the officers could learn from this. Suddenly, another officer who had been nearby walked over. His name was Sergeant Collins. With a calm presence, he looked at Lisa's ID and then back at the two younger officers. "Is everything settled here?" Harris hesitated, then said, "Yes, Sergeant. We thought there was a problem with her documents, but she showed us her judge ID." Collins nodded slowly. He looked at Lisa and said politely, "Ma'am, we apologize for the inconvenience. We'll make sure this does not happen again." Lisa smiled politely. "Thank you, Sergeant. I appreciate that." The officers quickly gathered Lisa's documents and bags. They tried to fix the situation as fast as possible, hoping to avoid any more awkward moments. Lisa felt the eyes of many people around watching the scene. Some of them looked uncomfortable, others curious. After the officers stepped aside, Lisa took a deep breath. She thought about how many people like her might face this kind of unfair treatment every day. How many black travelers might be stopped, questioned, or even extorted without any real reason. How many had no way to prove who they were or to defend themselves? Lisa knew that the problem was bigger than just these two officers. It was about a system that allowed bias to grow quietly. It was about attitudes that judged people by their skin color, Before knowing their story, she had faced challenges like this before in her life. When she was younger, going to school, getting a job, or even walking down the street, people sometimes looked at her differently. She had learned to be strong, to speak up, and to work hard. That was how she became a judge. She wanted to use her position to make sure others would not have to go through what she had. As Lisa prepared to leave the airport, she felt a small tap on her shoulder. She turned and saw Sergeant Collins again. "Ma'am, if you have a moment, I would like to speak with you." Lisa nodded and followed him to a quiet corner. Collins looked serious but respectful. "I want to be honest with you. I have had complaints before about officers treating people unfairly. I will make sure your experience is taken seriously." Lisa looked at him surprised. "Thank you, Sergeant. It means a lot." Collins continued, "We are starting a training program to help officers recognize and reduce bias. It is not easy to change, but we want to do better." Lisa felt hope rise in her chest. Change was possible if people were willing to face the truth and work on it. They talked for a few minutes about the challenges law enforcement officers faced, the pressures of their job, and the importance of respect and fairness. Lisa shared some of her own experiences and explained why it was so important to treat every person with dignity. After their talk, Collins thanked her again and promised to follow up. Lisa smiled and left the airport, ready to start the next chapter of her work as a federal judge. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Cars honked, people walked by with their bags, and the sky was now bright with sunlight. Lisa took a deep breath and felt a sense of determination. She knew that one moment like the one she had just lived could become a story that helped others understand why fairness mattered. She thought about the many cases she would soon hear as a judge, cases about justice, equality, and rights. She wanted to be a voice for those who had been ignored or mistreated. She wanted to make sure that everyone, no matter who they were, could feel safe and respected under the law. As she walked to her car, Lisa thought about her family and friends. She knew they would be proud of her, but more than that, she wanted to make them proud by doing the right thing. She believed that real change started with people who stood up, spoke out, and showed kindness even in difficult moments. The airport incident was a reminder of the work ahead. It was a sign that even those with good intentions sometimes made mistakes when they judged too quickly. But it was also a reminder that people could learn, grow, and change. Lisa felt grateful for the chance to help make that change. Ready to face the challenges, and she was ready to be a leader. The day moved forward, and Lisa drove home with a calm mind. She thought about the future and all the ways she could make a difference. She knew it would not be easy, but she was not afraid, because she carried with her the strength of many who had come before her, the strength of courage, hope, and justice, and that strength would guide her every step of the way. After the airport incident, the two officers, Harris and Reed, found themselves in a quiet room at the police station. They sat across from each other, both feeling uneasy. Their earlier confidence had disappeared, replaced by a heavy silence that weighed on them. Harris rubbed his hands nervously and said, "I can't believe we didn't realize she was a judge. We treated her like a criminal." Reed nodded. "Right. Yeah, I feel bad. I didn't want to be rude, but I guess I let my assumptions take over." They both thought about what had happened. The woman they had stopped was calm and respectful the whole time, even when they were harsh. But their attitude had been different because of how she looked. That thought made Harris frown. "We have to do better," he said quietly. "We can't treat people unfairly just because of their skin color or how they dress," Reed agreed. "It's hard sometimes. We see so many people every day, and sometimes we make quick judgments. That's no excuse." The officers knew their actions could damage trust between the police and the community. They had always wanted to protect and serve, but now they understood how their behavior could hurt that goal. Meanwhile, news of the incident began to spread. Some travelers at the airport had watched the encounter and talked about it. Social media picked up the story quickly because Lisa was a new federal judge, a respected figure in the community. People were curious about what had happened and how it had been handled. The police department soon received questions from the public. People wanted to know if the officers had done the right thing. The department took the situation seriously. They opened an internal review to understand exactly what had happened and how to prevent similar problems in the future. Lisa, on her part, continued with her busy schedule. She had many important tasks waiting for her as a federal judge, but she also kept the airport experience in her mind. It reminded her why her role was so important. She thought about the many people who did not have her power or her voice. How could she use her position to help them? She began planning ways to work with law enforcement and community leaders to promote fairness and understanding. One of Lisa's first actions was to meet with local police officials. She wanted to share her experience and offer suggestions. In the meeting, she spoke honestly and clearly. "I believe we need more training on bias and fairness," she said. Officers face difficult situations, but assumptions can lead to mistakes that hurt people and damage trust. The police chief listened carefully. "Thank you for your honesty, Judge Lisa. We want to improve, and your perspective is valuable." They talked about ways to build better relationships between the police and the community, Lisa suggested. Workshops, open dialogues, and more opportunities for officers to meet and understand the people they serve. Outside the meetings and the work, Lisa's story became a symbol. It showed how bias could appear even in small moments, like a conversation at the airport. But it also showed how people could learn and change in the police department. Harris and Reed volunteered to be part of new training programs. They wanted to make sure they never repeated the mistake of judging someone unfairly again. They felt responsible for their actions and wanted to help build a better future. At home, Lisa told her family about the incident. They listened and supported her. Her children asked questions about fairness and respect. Lisa used the chance to teach them about courage and kindness. "I want you to always stand up for what is right," she told them, no matter how hard it may be. Friends and colleagues also reached out to Lisa, offering encouragement and sharing their own experiences with bias and injustice. The story connected many people who wanted to see change as days turned into weeks. Lisa worked on important cases. In court, she was careful and thoughtful in every decision. She knew that her role was more than just a job, it was a chance to help build a fairer world. One afternoon, she received a letter from a young woman who had watched the news about the airport incident. The letter said how inspired she was by Lisa's strength and dignity. "You showed me that no matter what others think, I can be proud of who I am," the letter read. Lisa smiled and felt a deep sense of purpose. She knew the road ahead would be long, but moments like this made it worthwhile. She continued to speak at events about justice and equality. She reminded people that respect begins with seeing others as human beings, not as stereotypes. The officers Harris and Reed also took part in community events. They spoke openly about their mistakes and what they had learned. It was not easy for them to admit fault, but they knew honesty was the first step to healing. The police chief announced new policies to support fair treatment and reduce bias. The department partnered with local leaders to create programs that built trust and understanding. Lisa and the police officers began to work together on projects that brought the community closer. They organized workshops where people could talk openly and learn from each other's experiences. Through this work, many people began to see the value of listening and empathy. The airport incident became a turning point, a moment that sparked conversations and action. Lisa knew that changing attitudes was not something that happened overnight. It required patience, courage, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. But she was ready for the challenge. She was ready to help build a future where no one would be judged unfairly because of their race or appearance. She remembered the moment in the airport when the officers first stopped her. It was painful to think about, but it was also a reminder of why her work mattered so much. Her calm, steady response had made a difference. It had shown that dignity and respect could overcome prejudice. And now, with the support of her community and even some of the officers involved, Lisa was hopeful. She believed that together, they could create a safer, kinder, and fairer place for everyone. because every person deserved to be seen for who they truly weren't, just by the color of their skin, by the strength of their character. After the airport incident and the conversations that followed, Lisa's thoughts often returned to what had happened there. It was a moment filled with mixed emotions. She felt relief that the situation ended peacefully, but she also felt sadness, because it revealed how much work was still needed to fight unfair treatment. As a new federal judge, Lisa understood deeply the power and responsibility her role carried. She knew that justice was not just about laws written on paper. It was about how those laws were applied and how people were treated in everyday life. That incident reminded her that many people, especially people of color, faced unfair treatment. Regularly, often in places where they expected to be safe, Lisa decided that her first steps as a judge would focus on not just making fair decisions in the courtroom, but also reaching out to the community to inspire change. She wanted to build bridges between people and the institutions that served them. One morning, Lisa organized a meeting at the courthouse. She invited community leaders, local police officers, civil rights advocates, and ordinary citizens. The room was full of people eager to listen and learn. Lisa opened the meeting by sharing her own experience at the airport, explaining calmly and clearly what had happened. "I was stopped and questioned because of my race, even though I had done nothing wrong," she told the group. "But when the officers saw who I was, everything changed." This shows how bias can affect the way people are treated. The room was silent for a moment, and one community leader spoke up. "Judge Lisa, thank you for sharing this. It helps us understand the challenges many people face every day." Others nodded in agreement. Lisa went on to explain that fighting bias required more than just policies. It needed education, awareness, and honest conversations. "We must work together to create a system that treats everyone fairly and respectfully," she said. "This means training for law enforcement, open dialogue with the community, and holding ourselves accountable." The police chief was also present. He stood and said, "We recognize the mistakes made and we are committed to change. This meeting is a step forward." The group discussed ideas for training programs, community events, and ways to improve communication. Lisa felt hopeful as people from different backgrounds came together with a shared goal. Meanwhile, the officers who had stopped Lisa at the airport were also facing their own challenges. The police department had begun an internal review of their actions. Both Harris and Reed were asked to reflect on what had happened and to attend special training sessions focused on bias and cultural awareness at first. The officers felt defensive. It was hard to admit they had been wrong. But over time, they began to understand how their assumptions had affected their behavior. They learned that fairness meant treating every person with respect, no matter who they were. Harris said to Reed, "One day, I never thought about how my actions could hurt someone's trust." "I want to be better," Reed agreed. "Me too. We have to do more than just talk about it, we have to change." They both volunteered to participate in community outreach programs. They joined events where they could meet with local residents, listen to their stories, and answer questions honestly. It was uncomfortable at first. They soon saw how important these connections were. Back in the courtroom, Lisa was busy hearing cases that mattered deeply to people's lives. She was careful to listen to everyone with an open mind. She wanted people to feel heard and respected, worked hard to apply the law fairly. Knowing that justice was more than just rules, it was about human dignity. One day a young man came before Lisa's court. He was nervous and quiet, but Lisa saw the fear in his eyes. As she listened to his story, she realized he had been treated unfairly by the police in his neighborhood. She made sure his case was handled carefully, and she reminded the officers involved about the importance of respect and fairness. Lisa's actions in the SEL Broom began to build trust in the community. People saw that justice was possible and that someone was willing to stand up for them. Outside the courthouse, Lisa spoke at schools and community centers. She shared her journey and encouraged young people to believe in themselves. She told them, no matter where you come from, you can make a difference. Stand up for what is right and treat others with kindness. Her message inspired many. Letters and emails came from students and adults alike, thanking her for her courage and honesty. At the same time, the police department continued to work on reforms. New training programs became mandatory for all officers. They learned about BIAS, empathy, and the history of injustice in their community. Some officers said it was eye-opening, and they hoped it would help change attitudes. Community meetings became regular events, where residents and police officers could talk openly. Problems were discussed honestly, and solutions were found together. Slowly, trust began to grow. Lisa knew the journey was far from over. She also knew that real change took time, patience, and persistence. But the airport incident, painful as it was, sparked something important. It was a reminder that even in difficult moments, courage and respect could open the door to understanding. Lisa thought often about the future her own, her communities, and the country's. She believed in justice, but she also believed in people. She believed that when people came together to listen, learn, and care, they could build a better world. She was proud to be part of that work. One evening, as Lisa sat at her desk, she received a call from Sergeant Collins, the officer who had apologized at the airport. He told her about the progress in the police department and thanked her for helping start a conversation that was making a difference. Lisa smiled and said, "Thank you, Sergeant. It takes all of us to make change happen." They talked a little longer, sharing hopes for the future. After the call, Lisa felt a deep peace. She knew the road ahead might still be hard, but she was ready. She was ready to use her voice and her position to stand up for fairness, equality, and respect. She was ready to help build a world where no one would be judged by the color of their skin, but by the strength of their heart and character. And that was a future worth fighting for. Time moved forward, and Lisa continued her work as a federal judge with great dedication. Every day, she faced important decisions that affected the lives of many people. But beyond her role in the courtroom, she also became a strong voice for fairness, equality, and justice in her community. Her experience at the airport remained in her heart as a reminder of why her work mattered so much. It showed her how prejudice and bias could hurt people and damage trust. But it also showed her that change was possible when people were willing to listen and learn. Lisa began traveling to schools, community centers, and local events to speak about justice and respect. She told her story and encouraged others to stand up against unfair treatment. Her words inspired many people, especially young people, who dreamed of a better future. She often said, "No matter your background, you have the power to make a difference. Treat others with kindness, and always stand for what is right." Lisa's efforts helped bring the community closer together. People from different walks of life started to understand each other better. The police department, inspired by the conversations and feedback, continued its work to improve training and build trust with residents. The officers who had stopped Lisa at the airport, Harrison Reed, became part of this change. They spoke openly about their mistakes and what they had learned. They shared their stories in schools and meetings, showing that even when people make errors, they can grow and improve. Harris once told a group of students, "We made a wrong choice when we judged someone unfairly. But we're working hard to do better and treat everyone with respect." Reed added, "It's important to listen and learn. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly." The community appreciated their honesty. It helped heal some wounds and opened the door to new understanding. Meanwhile, Lisa worked on important legal reforms. She collaborated with lawmakers and community leaders to create policies that protected people from discrimination. She pushed for more transparency in law enforcement and for programs that promoted equality. Her efforts did not go unnoticed. She received awards and recognition for her work in justice and community service. But Lisa remained humble. She knew that true change came from many people working together. One day, Lisa received a letter from a young girl named Maya. Maya wrote that she had been inspired by Lisa's story and wanted to become a lawyer one day. "Thank you for showing me that I can be strong and proud," Maya wrote. "I want to help make the world a fairer place." Lisa smiled and wrote back, encouraging Maya to follow her dreams and reminding her that courage and kindness were powerful tools for change. As the years passed, Lisa's influence grew. She helped create programs that brought police officers and community members together for conversations and activities. These programs helped break down barriers and build trust. People began to feel safer and more respected in their neighborhoods. Stories of unfair treatment became less common. Instead, stories of cooperation and understanding started to spread. Lisa's journey from the tense moment at the airport to becoming a leader in justice showed how one person's strength could inspire many. Her calm dignity in the face of unfairness had not only changed the officers who stopped her, but had sparked a movement toward fairness in her community. Lisa often thought about the lessons she had learned. She believed that no matter how difficult the struggle, standing up for justice was always worth it. She continued to remind people that fairness and respect were not just ideas, but actions that everyone could take every day. Her hope was that one day no one would have to face the kind of unfair treatment she had experienced. That people would be judged not by their skin color, but by the content of their character. And with her work, and the work of many others, that hope was becoming a reality. Lisa's story became a symbol of courage, change, and the power of truth. It reminded everyone that even in the hardest moments, kindness and justice could shine through. And that is a future worth believing in.